So how do we trust? Maybe that's the question that everybody's been waiting for. The answer to that question is what's going to lead us to some kind of freedom. It's going to lead us to a greater ability to trust in God. Well, we know what trust is. We know that trust is confidence in someone else's promises. We know why we should trust. Well, because of their past, their track record. We know ultimately that God is trustworthy. He is worthy of my trust in the future. But how do I do it? Trust is a funny thing because I can't just tell you, hey, trust God. You're like, I'm trying. I don't know how to try harder. How do I do it? And I can't just tell you, just trust me, right? When somebody tells me, hey, just trust me on this, just trust me. Oftentimes I recoil. I'm like, why do you have to be so emphatic about proclaiming that I should trust you and demanding that I trust you? Sometimes that makes me not want to trust you even more, right? And so how do I trust? Well, before, I differentiated between faith and trust. And today, maybe it's worthwhile to differentiate between respect and trust. Because oftentimes, I hear people say, you have to earn my respect. And to that, I say, I don't think that that's the Christian disposition. I don't think as a Christian I can actually say that because at least at the most foundational level, we believe in infinite human dignity. And so every person that I come across, I have an automatic disposition of respecting every human person at all times. And I think that that's just the way that we have to live. That's a disposition that we as Christians, an outlook, a perspective of life that I have to have. The question is, do I have to trust them? And I think the answer to that is no. I don't automatically trust someone whom I respect. I can respect them and not trust them. In fact, not trusting someone that I just meet is not disrespect to their person. Why? Because trustworthiness is shown over time. So what is trust? Interesting, because trust is kind of like a feeling. That's why I can't just demand it of you. In a certain sense, trust has to be felt over time so that it can turn in a disposition to be able to now trust you and even recommend you to others and say, this person is trustworthy. Here's 4 things that I think that will help us, however, grow in that feeling of trust that will allow us to arrive at a disposition of the trust of God. And the first one is this, to activate that relationship. In any relationship, but let's talk about the relationship with God. If we already have a relationship with God of faith, and we believe that it's good for us, we're going to grow in trust when we activate that relationship. Trust is like a muscle. It can be trained. It can be formed. It can grow. Isn't it true that when you start working out, not only are you getting stronger, but you feel stronger. You feel better about yourself. You feel like your muscles are being toned, right? In the same way, as I live out my relationship with God, not only is my relationship with Him growing stronger, but I actually feel like I trust Him more. My trust is growing because I'm living out of that relationship. So how do we do that? Well, again, your prayer life. Activate your prayer life. Activate the sacramental life. Activate your study of the Lord, right? During this summer, spend some time with Him. Spend some time getting to know Him better through His scriptures or through great books. And growing in relationship with Him will allow you now to trust Him. You're going to grow in trust as you spend time in that relationship. So activate the relationship. The second thing is time. Remember that just like working out, it's going to take some time to get stronger, to feel stronger, to actually be stronger. So the same thing with trust. It's going to take some time. So be patient with yourself. Be patient with your Lord as you are living out that relationship with Him. The third thing is remember. I talked about this yesterday, but remember God's track record. Continually to call that to mind. Don't leave that by the wayside. Don't let that just be the history of the knowledge of your God, but your active knowledge of God. Maybe you want to call those things to mind every day, especially if you're trying to grow in trust of Him. Call to mind all of His goodness for all of time, for all of humanity. The only thing He wants is to call people back into union, into His family. He desires that. Remember that. But also maybe as you're living out this relationship with God, you're actively living it out over time. Maybe you should just name those things in the ways that the Lord has been faithful in your life. Name them. Name your past. Name all the ways that the Lord has brought you to this point. Name the ways that He's been active and faithful even during this short time that you started to activate your faith. Start to write them down. Put them in a journal. Make sure that you don't forget them. Remember, we have to remember. And the fourth thing is perspective. We have to recall that perspective of God's goodness. I have a disposition that God always wants my good, even when things don't turn out as I would have expected or if I would have wanted. I trust, and I'm going to take that disposition. I'm going to take that perspective always, that this is going to turn out for the good for those who love him. Romans 8:28, everything works out for the good for those who love God. Even my failures, even things I can't control, even my sinfulness, God will work those things out for my good and for my salvation. And so, I know you have faith. I'm asking you to remember your faith, to activate your faith, give it time, to always remember, and to live with the perspective of God's goodness, that he wants good for you. You have faith. And once again, I'm inviting you into the disposition and the active life of trust in God.